Thank you everyone for taking the time to look at our previous videos about the elemental estimate. Today we're going to cover the elemental estimate finishing items. What that means for us is electrical, second fixings, fit out, finishing trays, and external work. In my opinion, as an estimator, this is the easiest part of estimating. Counting doors, counting lights, measuring cabinets, measuring square meters of bedrooms, bathrooms, all that sort of stuff, tiling, it's actually the easiest part of estimating, especially when we enter the data into the system. Now, as I go into lighting, the combinations that we have set, 6, 4, 2, and 1, there's actually a reason for it. What we need to do is basically picture in our head as we go through the estimation and the plans. So in the main living room, generally we have 6 lights. In big areas and big bedrooms, we have 4 down lights. Smaller bedrooms is 2 down lights. 1 is for your amenity rooms. Sometimes hallways, passageways might have 1, might have 2, might have 4, but these are all preset combinations. As you go through our finishing items and through also the elemental estimate, we do have type A, type B, type C. What we're actually proposing is these all have different product codes in the back end of the BOQ. You could pick up the product code for type C and overwrite the pricing to suit higher level lights. B can be mid-level lights and C could be 8-level lights. We're giving you the control to change the pricing. As we go into the pendants, there's either 3 pendants over the island benchtop, or sometimes we do 1 or 2. These are the options we have in the system. Internal wall lights, same process applies, 1, 5, or 8, type A, type B, type C. External wall lights. Now, critical point that I'm going to share with you. A common mistake, almost every estimator that I train, they always miss this one. Always put an external light near the laundry door. If I'm hanging out the washing at night, the last thing I want is to hang out the washing with no light. So estimators, please, 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 always put an external light next to the laundry. Type A, type B, type C, these are all situations in place. Fluoros go in the garage. Strip lighting can be throughout anywhere. You can find it in joinery. You can find it in the ensuite and bathroom, and you can also find it in the kitchen. Track lighting is another feature that's typically found in main living rooms and kitchens. External lighting, we just need to be considered the size of the block. We're not going to put in potentially, 100 ground lights for, only 40 square meters of backyard. Let's just be considerate. Sometimes it's not provided on the plan, but if you're going to make a decision, just be smart with your answers. As we go into the fit out, as we click house type up the top, it generally adds in 6 power points for the single power points for connections like garage doors, range hoods, small other bits and pieces. But if it's requested in the rooms for single power points, add single power points. As we go into the double power points, combinations are set for a reason. 5, 3, and 1. 5 is usually your main living room. 3 is generally for the bedrooms, and 1 is generally for the wet rooms. There's nothing stopping you adding in extras. These are just preset combinations we have in place. Data points can be known as a lot of things. Now, the pricing for a data point versus the pricing of a USB point is very similar. We just call it a generic data point. There's multiple different types of points that we could possibly have. We don't want to overcomplicate the situation. We want to make sure we capture the cost. Standard fit out items, smoke detectors. Usually single-story houses have anywhere between 2 to 3. Double-story houses usually have anywhere between 3 to 4, sometimes 5, depending on how many hallways, depending on the length of the house. Always refer to your plans or do some research. I'd imagine ChatGPT has some functionality built in these days to make these decisions a lot easier. Dimmers, sensors, sweep fans. Now, sweep fans, interesting one. If we're not going to do ducted or reverse cycle air conditioning throughout the house, and sometimes we do split systems, what's actually a common combination that usually happens is that we put suite fans in the bedrooms. So just be mindful. So just a bit of a tip, if they're just putting in a split system into the main living room, that's generally your trigger to say they're not going to do a full system. So when you have bedrooms, put in some sweep fans. Sweep fans. Speak English. All right, miscellaneous items. That's where you find all your extras. This is an evolving system. We're going to add more and more items as technology grows. So I expect in 3 months' time, 4 months' time, there'll probably be a couple more items that are found inside this part here. Second fixings. External doors is actually really interesting. So the golden rule with external doors is that if we are opening a door into the house from the outside, it needs to be a solid door. The common mistake every single estimator makes when I train them is they always put in an internal door that goes from the garage into the house. Now, let's talk about a situation. If the homeowner leaves the garage door open and we have a hollow door that goes from the garage to the house, the Mr. Robber can easily punch down that hollow core door and get in quite easily. That's why we always put in a solid door and we call it a garage entry door. Glazed or solid, your choice. Internal doors, when you select out internal doors, they generally come out at 2040. And as we go into our feature doors, we have full height doors. We got multiple different options. As you click out on it, your options are available. Mirror sliders, barn doors, internal pivot doors. Those are generally expensive. Double doors, we've all found it in here. Ceilings, we do have preset combinations. What I have noticed, and we do need to make an adjustment to our system, is our combinations are not entirely correct. 65 square meters, 40 square meters is generally good for your main living rooms. 25 square meters is probably for your smaller kitchens, but what we're actually missing inside of our price library here is the size of the bedrooms. So one of the features that I'm going to ask my team to do after this meeting here is I'm going to add in the square meters of bedrooms to make life a little bit easier. I will say creating an estimating template like this is not easy. Always work in progress. Hey, it proves we're human. Architectural cornice. Now, important to know that when we go to our building items and internal walls and we add in the internal walls, it's automatically going to add in the cornice. We're going to have standard cornice, but what we're going to do when we get into our fixings and we go to the ceilings, we're going to give you the option to do different types of cornices. So if you have a client who has a specific request for the cornice, you can actually tell them this is the additional cost for this particular cornice. Staircases, what's the most important thing that is generally missed by an estimator is allowing a cost for the carpet guy, the tiler, or the timber guy to actually build out the staircase. It's not, if we're doing the treads, it's not just as simple as slapping a piece of timber on there and then off you go. We sometimes need to pay attention to the detail. If we have a sharp edge as we keep going up the stairs, it's going to hurt. So sometimes we always pay some more money to make either a beveled edge or rounded edge. So it's important to add in the style of finishing that's going to go to the staircase. I know sometimes the carpet people ask for an extra $1,000 when they do a staircase. I know the timber flooring people will ask for potentially another $2,000. I have seen it come across, and that's why we have this item. We got options for timber staircases, spiral staircases, steel staircases, and it's all based on lineal meters. Internal, external balustrade, type A, type B. Moldings, basically this is just your melamine shelving. However, on the external, we can put in the feature moldings like the polystyrene molding, populate the quantity, adjust the rate inside the BOQ. Screening, aluminium, timber, internal, external. We're going to have different type of timber for the external and different type of timber for the internal. So that's why they're separated. Very important to do that inside your estimation. Potentially the estimation will say, let's just throw a number out there, $250 a linear meter for external treated timber screening versus something that's internal can go as low as maybe $50 a linear meter. Automatic screening, big bucks. So not cheap. As we go into the fit out is actually really important. Now, the style of estimating that we're trying to implement into this system is we're going to take a little bit more time with our fit out. Now, if we look at estimating as an overall through estimating online, we are saving so much time by building the structural elements of the takeoff and the building elements of the takeoff. And with that time that we've saved, we're actually going to spend a little bit more time in our fit out. So what I'm asking for estimators from this point of view is let's break it down room by room. The reason why we're breaking it down room by room is we can then say to the client, well, you got timber flooring throughout. I understand that. But what we're going to do is we're going to put a more expensive timber flooring in the main living room. And maybe in the bedrooms, we might downgrade the quality. That is a very typical situation for carpet as well. Cover your quantities. The quantities are preset to suit main living room sizes. Tick, flick, off you go. Fireplaces, joinery, at least 10 to 15% of the contract value is joinery. A lot of money is usually spent in joinery, and we do really encourage builders to potentially leave this out of the estimation, but then when we're talking to the homeowner, put it in face to face, make them aware that it's an expensive item. Moldings, same again, this is melamine shelving. As we go out into the bedrooms, we're going into the carpet, timber floorings, once again, preset quantities that suit the style of the room. Full height robes is when we've got custom joinery from floor to ceiling. Half height robes is generally if we've got that custom joinery that goes up to about 1.5 to 1.7 meters high. And then above is an open space. That open space just might be a rail. So just be considerate of what you put in there because they are two different prices. Island bench tops, you'll be surprised. There's some very high-end architectural houses that have 20 square meter robes. Lucky them. And inside those types of projects, they will have island cabinets. Maybe they store their fancy watches or their fancy shoes, each to their own. Kitchen. I believe that kitchen is actually really important to make sure that we get correct. If we understand the kitchen takeoff, we're going to understand the joinery for the laundry, the bathrooms, the ensuite, and anywhere else. So my first step of rule when I train an estimator is to learn the kitchens. So measuring the kitchens is very important. The island benchtop will say 2.5 meters, but I want you to go to 3 meters. It is never ordered and it is never charged at the exact lineal meters. Just because they drew 2.5 meters, you are not going to be charged as a builder at 2.5 meters. That's why we have those preset quantities in place of 3, 5, 8, and 12. Same situation with the stone bench tops. Same situation with the splashbacks, overhead cupboards, add in your bank drawers, end panels. End panels are really important. Another mistake a lot of estimators make is the dishwasher. So a dishwasher is actually a void where there's no carcass, and then you've got a stone bench top above. Now, I know that for some houses, they leave the white melamine on the insides, but most of the times they will put end panels, so it's a decorative finish on the inside. You can have up to 3, so left side, right side, and back. Full height cabinets, that is expensive. We go out into our joinery. Here's all your additional options. Sinks, zip taps, tiling, appliance options, and extra appliance options. For those who are lucky to put a coffee machine in there, there's the option. As we go out into the laundry, same thing, measure the cabinets, overhead cupboards, bench tops. One of the common rules that estimators make, common mistakes estimators make is they measure through the dryer and the washing machine openings. If you want to get technical, And if you want to be critical about estimating, don't measure through it. However, some cabinet makers will charge you, so it's not such a bad thing. But if we're trying to be critical in estimating, you can cut that short, but make sure you put the additional quantities in your stone benchtop. I like to say to my estimators, if we're doing a very entry-level house, do it precise and don't go through the opening. If we're doing a high-end house, go through the opening because you want to capture that cost. Joinery accessories. If we're doing a double-story house, we potentially might have a laundry chute. So what's actually happening here is we're pre-asking you those questions to find it on the plan. Click out on every category, and then you're probably not going to make a mistake from there. Ensuite, same process as the kitchen. This is why I said it's very important to understand your kitchen, because if you understand the kitchen, you understand the rest. Fixtures, obviously, there's more fixtures that happen in the bathrooms and en suites. We had a situation the other day where there's a dual shower head. So we added it into the system, worked out the price. As we go into the bathroom, we're going to do the same setup. It's all straightforward. We must always go to the external fixtures. Instantaneous hot water systems, electric hot water systems, solar hot water systems. Now, there's a golden rule that I've always learned in estimating. It's not necessarily the rule that exactly happens on site, but if you have a bathroom and the hot water system is outside the bathroom, but that next bathroom is more than 20 meters away, you've got to add a second hot water system. So take that into consideration. If you have a very long, narrow, skinny house, sometimes you need two hot water systems. So the 20 meter, 18 meter rule may come into place. External trades and finishing trades is important to capture those quantities. As you go out into the painting, sometimes in our recipes in structural and building, we don't capture the painting as we enter the quantities. For example, the external posts. Sometimes external posts are concealed and sometimes they're exposed. So add in those quantities of posts. It's the same as the barge. When we do a barge inside of the structural build, we actually are measuring it for external timber beams. So we actually need to have a cost to paint it. Another critical mistake that estimators always make is painting the underside of the exposed steel. Now, there's a question in the structural when you go into the lintels of what's the lineal meters of equal angle. If you're building a double brick house, you need to have a lintel that's on the inside leaf to carry the brickwork and a lintel on the outside leaf to carry the brickwork. If the total lineal meters is 90, the total lineal meters of the painter is 45, because we don't pay the painter to paint the inside. Important to know. As we go out to the repainting, it's all set up to room sizes. Apologies. Air conditioning. I like to use large, medium, and small. However, you can actually use the square meters of the total house area that you're entering into the system. Passive house requirements for those who are building those fancy houses with all the fancy systems in place. We're always growing. Everyone has different systems, techniques, and processes. So if you have any ideas of what you'd like us to add, let us know. Upgraded insulation requirements and different sorts of membranes and upgrades that can happen throughout construction. As we go into our internal other, this is where we keep some random stuff. For example, a sauna, wallpaper, lifts, blinds, hydronic heat panels, that sort of stuff. As I finish up here, we're on the external work, stone cladding, miscellaneous items. Miscellaneous items is probably one of the most important things to cover out because there are a lot of items that are in there. External floor treatments, these all produce out into a bill of quantities. So for example, if I add in 46 square meters of non-structural decking, I show my BOQ. Here's the breakdown of the decking, the carpentry, the external items. Driveways, they're preset quantities. We're suggesting that it's a 6 meter wide driveway. If it's a 5 meter wide driveway, don't be too concerned. We're trying to capture the cost. We're not trying to be so precise with our estimating. Floor finish is usually generic square meters. Pathways is usually 1 meter wide, generally down the side of the house. We're trying to use shortcuts to make estimating faster. Outdoor tiling, stepping stones, retaining walls, panel and posts, timber retaining, brick walls, planter boxes. Now we're getting into a little bit of the structural. Landscaping, there's generally a lot of items. Make a decision if you're going to do an irrigation system or a bore system. These are options that are in there as well. Fencing, pools and spas. Now we are going to build out some more information about our pools and spas to give some more options around costings. Work in progress. We will get there. So that's all I got. I will close off the recording from here. It seems as though I've got this one right. This was actually take 3. So thanks for those who have stayed on board, and I'll stop the recording. If you want to ask any questions after that, let's go for it. Thank you.